Who's ready to talk about representation of sexual orientation and gender identity? No? Okay. Anyways, I'm moving on to more topics in the tag. I think after this and kind of representation of disability, I will be done with the really, really long and blah 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 videos. So yay! Less talking! Woohoo! Okay, so I actually kind of differ, I think, from like everyone in the fandom when it comes to discussions of representation of sexuality, in that, at least as regards sexuality, not gender identity. I will talk about gender identity a little bit later, but as regards sexuality, I think that Webseries land is kind of like phenomenal and groundbreaking and just doing things that standard media is not doing. I am constantly kind of amazed by the fact that almost every single web series has really, really good representation of different types of sexuality, and you don't just see straight people, and you don't just see also gay or lesbian, or like there's discussions of where you might fall on the spectrum. There is discussions of the fact that sexuality is a spectrum. There's so much nuance in the discussion, and I'm honestly often very surprised by how frustrated some people seem to be that there isn't better representation, because almost every single show has, if not one queer character, then multiple. I can really only think of one or two shows that don't have any. And, like, big picture, we are talking about pretty amazing representation and a lot of different types. That's in terms of sexuality. In terms of gender identity, I don't think I've seen any show that has had a transgender character. A couple of shows I've heard have, like, non-gender binary characters, but nothing that I've seen. I think Carmilla, but I haven't seen it. It's an area that I guess is left to be explored, and I think that it is worth discussing and exploring, but it hasn't. So in that respect, I would say that web series have where to improve to. In terms of representation of sexuality, I think that the current trend, I wouldn't call it a trend, the current setup is pretty good. You have a lot of different types of characters, and no one is just kind of the token queer character. A lot of shows are majority queer. It's not like television at all. It's not like movies. And I think that part of that has to do also with the discussion of race, where you can't change the race of an actor, but you can gender bend a character, and you can make a character, represent a sexuality that is kind of a marginalized sexuality, and the creators do. Creators introduce diversity to a story through that, and I think that that is not trivial, and that it actually should be commended. Again, there is room in terms of discussions of gender identity, and I think that that's kind of the next step. But I would also say that there's a place in which I would want those characters to be acted by actors who are themselves transgender or non-binary, and not just sort of faking, I guess, if that's the right word even when discussing acting. But yeah, largely speaking, I think it's actually pretty good, and it's not to say that we shouldn't talk about it, because we should. The fact that we talk about it, I think, contributes hugely to the diversity that we see on screen. But I don't know. I'm generally impressed with how Webseries Land handles sexuality, even in the areas where maybe the content isn't so good, the intent is clearly in the right direction. So I would say keep at it. Don't slack off because, whatever, we're good. Like, stick to this standard or better, and work more on the side of gender identity. And, yeah.